and welcome to Time to Talk with me, Lez Graham. So today, Nick Ridley has been in my chair and I've been in his, and he's been interviewing me and talking all about, crikey, things that make me and what inspired the Pet Gun Dog books and why I wrote them. So I hope you enjoy this little special interview, although it's not so little because we did talk a lot about lots of different things. So I hope you enjoy it. Get yourself a cup of tea and settle down. It's time to talk with me, Lez Graham. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. So for this talk we've got something totally different. I'm actually going to interview Lez Graham. Now I've worked with Lez for about the last 10 years through the Pet Gun Dog series. And I know bits and pieces about her, but a lot of her fans and people who buy her books really don't know what's behind the words and the technique. So, first thing I'm going to ask her, you're sighing already, look. I can tell the nerves are...
It's really horrible being this side.
The nerves are building.
Oh, it's gone warm.
I've actually got quite a big collection of gun dog training books, and I've got some really old ones. But the Pet Gun Dog was something quite unique. So just let me into the secret of what was behind it.
Oh my goodness. So it came out of the training classes that I was running in Marlborough. Part of it was I trained as a behaviourist. So I was training basic obedience in New Zealand. I used to train for Manukau Dog Training Club. I was one of the club trainers. And I was privileged enough to follow a behaviourist around called Noel Hutchinson, who's no longer with us. And I used to sit and watch him outside of the ring every Monday night. I had 6 hours training every week on a Monday night with Noel. And I just really liked the way he handled the dog, and he got very much inside of the dog's head and worked with the psychology of the dog rather than with food. He didn't use food or toys for training. And when I came back home, I started studying for doing behaviour work when I was in New Zealand. And when I came home and I was working as a behaviourist and really interested in doing gun dog work again, I trained Bart, my first lab, the plan was to do working tests with them. When I got to New Zealand, there was no working test. It's all kind of fake shooting. They've got shoots now, but then they didn't. So all the trials were done on cold game and there was no dummy work. When I come back, I wanted to do gun dog work again and started reading books, and I found a book. You probably know which book it is, but where
you're not going to tell us then?
I think it's The Working Gun Dog, Martin Dealey.
Martin Dealey, yep.
And there's a picture of him holding a Springer Spaniel up above his head like this and giving it a shake. And I thought, that can't be right. We can't train dogs like that. There's no need to train dogs like that. All we need to do is get inside of the head. And I found the guys who were coming gun dog training with me were really screaming out for information, good information on dog training, dog psychology, because I was a kinesiologist still.
Just what's a kinesiologist? I can't even say it, let alone know what it is.
And it's kinesi.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, yeah.
It's a combination of, it was developed by a chiropractor in the 70s, and he brought in the traditional Chinese element side of it. So we work very much within the traditional Chinese medicine principle. So
Good. I'm glad you said principle there, because I think of the situation we're in at the moment, the least we say about Chinese medicine, the better, I think. Dear, oh dear.
We don't do none of that nonsense.
No.
Powdered and stuff. But it's very much energetic medicine. So working with the body's energy to help it heal and correcting, muscle tension and misalignment, dietary problems and stuff. So.
But where does that fit into the gun dog world? I mean, that's as far removed from traditional gun dog training as flying to the moon.
But it's not, because it's all about movement and mechanics of movement and having the body in balance. And so as a behaviourist, I would be looking at dogs and I'd be going, well, it might be a bit aggressive because its back's out or its jaw's not right, or And so I bring all of...
So a pain thing could be affecting the dog's behaviour,
Yeah,
ultimately.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and tension as well. And when I worked as a kinesiologist with dogs, I specialised in dogs and horses, and actually dyslexia as well. I worked with a lot of dyslexic children and adults. But from a dog perspective, I was working with lots of competition dogs, competition obedience dogs, and you could look at the dog. As soon as you got your hands on your dog, you could see which dog sport it did. So competition obedience dogs, base of the skull, just in front of the shoulder blades, and just in front of the pelvis would always be out on one side, because if we walking around like this, and it would
walking a hill unnaturally, in effect.
Very unnatural position. The agility dogs, it was normally the wrists, and the cruciates. And the showing dogs was always down the left hand side, because they were running like that, and it was always the strain. And so that really, when I started working with dogs from a behaviour perspective, I could really see where the imbalances were in the dog. And so we worked on that, as well as setting in like behaviour modification programs.
But that's still a big jump to go from that to, as I know you did, training people with their gun dogs on a cricket field, in effect, and you had the wood and everything. You had some lovely, lovely places down at Marlborough. But that's a big jump.
From behaviour, well, it was, and it was because I was seeing lots of gun dogs, because gun dogs are my passion, it's what I've got. And I was seeing, I mean, I can remember the dog that turned it for me. It was a guy who'd been recommended to get a dog by his doctor because he was suffering from depression. And he was a stockbroker, and he got, you know, the best house, the best wife, the best car. So he went and got the best dog, which was a field trial champion on field trial champion. He arranged for Bulkbusters to come out and do a puppy consult with them, and they let him down twice. And so he had this supercharged Ferrari of a dog in a crate for 3 months, waiting for somebody to help them. And he didn't know what to do, so he did nothing. And you would open the crate, and this dog would barge out of the crate, jump up on the benches, run around the benches, pulling everything off the benches, and then it would bite you. And it would come in, it would grab the back of your leg and bite you, and then run off. And
that was a Labrador.
Young Labrador, 5-month-old Labrador when I saw it. Mm-hmm. And it was really difficult dog for me. He looked like Bart when Bart was a puppy, so it immediately pulled the heartstrings. And I worked with the dog for a few months, and the final straw was I saw the dog on a long line, and every time the owner turned her back on him, because the man decided he didn't want anything to do with the dog. And so the mum took over, the wife took over. And every time she turned her back on the dog would attack her. She had bites all down the back of her arms, down the back. And so I said, we need to do something to sort this dog's head out. And so she brought it over. I wasn't training at the cricket club then. I was still working on a local field. And so she brought this dog over with her. And he tried getting at me through the glass in the back of the hatchback. You know, we struggled getting a lead on it. We got it out. I put a dummy in front of the dog, completely transformed it. And so I started off initially doing gun dog training for aggressive and really naughty pet gun dogs that were destroying the house or attacking the owners, and just to give it a focus.
But in that
something else.
But isn't that an interesting thing that you said there? Because when you can go back to that beginning of that story, mm-hmm. and then you've got somebody who's done probably no research on what kind of dog they wanted, no research on how they were going to get the dog that they think they want at the end of the day. Uh-huh. And so where have you've obviously picked up on the dog, and you've found that little trigger for the dog. But ultimately it's the people. It's just making sure these people understand the drive and the energy of these gun dog breeds.
It is, and they don't realise. I think the breeding of the lab has changed so much over 20 years, and there's more and more, field lines going in, and they're a lot more higher energy. The breeding, people are now breeding because they want the field trial champion, which is all very well. If you've got a litter of 11, you keep one. The 10 of them are probably going to end up in pet homes with people who are completely overdogged, or there's a lot of online training at the minute, long online forums, and they're not getting the best advice. I've seen.
Well, no, because anybody can give them advice.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen advice being given where, I've got a 7-month-old dog who's chasing rabbits, and they're being advised to let the dog chase rabbits and catch them, put steady in the sling later. No, let's not do that. So it's tough.
As you know, interesting enough on that point there, I write for the Sporting Gun, and I've just written an article about online training, and especially at this situation we're in at the moment, because there's so much online. People are popping up with online training things, competitions, and already it's filtering through that some of these dogs, because people have got time on their hands in this current situation, they're doing too much with their dogs are getting bored, and they're actually creating problems for themselves. So going forward, there's going to be, I think when we come out of the back of this corona situation, there's going to be a number of people with problems with their dogs that have actually been imposed because, ironically, we all want more time to train our dogs, but that's going to cause us a problem because we're doing too much with them.
There's training and there's training. We did a challenge, as you know, the Peck and Dog online challenge, and we were really careful that we didn't introduce any issues. So, especially on the run-off, somebody said, can we do, there's an exercise I do with the instructors called the triangle, where it involves 3 stop whistles before the dog gets to retrieve. And I said, we're not doing that because it takes about a year to train. And if you try and train it over the weekend, you'll break your dog because it'll get too sticky. It won't want to go for a retrieve. And I think the challenges are really good, but I think people aren't putting enough thought into them in relation to what's the repercussions of this. I mean, I've seen one where it's going to cause issues with dogs in the house collecting mail. If you do it too quickly, your dog's going to destroy your mail as it comes through the door. There's another one where they're doing.
But that to me is a trick. That's not relative to gun dog training in my eyes. Nobody's going to stick a pheasant through my letterbox, and I'm going to ask one of my dogs to go and get it. But it's finding that slight balance, I think, where what you're training the dog is relevant to what you're going to do.
Yes.
And it's almost going back. Sorry, I'll just say that. It's going back to what you said about your man with the Labrador. He bought the dog without actually any idea of what he was going to do.
Yeah. I think anything that we train a dog that isn't intrinsic behaviour is just a trick. That's my belief. So, dogs.
I've just done the egg challenge.
Well, I thought that's what I'm going to do that. But that is kind of intrinsic as well, because if you look at it from a pack perspective, a dog within a pack will retrieve game and bring it back to the pack. And it'll, if they go hunting, they do share and they do defer to the leader, the most senior ranking dog, they will defer to them. And to me, that's what gun dog training is all about. It's about pulling back on the kill. That's all we're training with dogs to do. So instead of going out, they do the gaze, which I'm really hot on. So they'll indicate on the gaze, and then they'll go into stalk mode, and then they'll, in the wild, they would then divide and conquer the animals that split up, one and go around the back and push it forward into the open jaws of the other dogs waiting, which is kind of what we do with the beta, we push them forward.
You told me something, and I have to admit, I've told other people this, and it was about the success rate of a pack of wolves or hunting dogs. Just share that, because from even a gun dog training point of view, it just goes to show this little explanation will go to show that if you let your dog get away with certain things too often, you create. So go on, share it.
Because it's like when they go hunting, they're only successful 2 out of 10 times, and so I use it when I'm talking about walking on a loose lead a lot. So if you let your dog pull on a lead, and you don't correct it every time, you don't insist on it walking nicely, then all that's going to happen is the dog's going to keep going and keep going, because in the wild they would only be successful 2 to 3 times in a hunt, and if they gave up, they would starve. And so dogs are so tenacious, you know. They didn't succeed this time, but they might next time, or they might the time after that, or they might the time after that. So we have to be really consistent in what we're doing and with the training to make sure that the dogs don't keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
I actually use it in a slightly different way to that. I use it as an explanation of, if you, let's for example on the stop whistle, when you're introducing the stop whistle, if you let that dog not get away with not stopping on the whistle 1 out of 10 times, 2 out of 10 times, that in its psychology is a successful thing. Because going back to your hunting scenario, it's successful 2 times out of 10. If they didn't think that was a good success rate, they would just give up.
Yes.
And we wouldn't have dogs and everything else. So that's how I use it, is to explain that if you let your dog get away with negative behaviour, if you like, in terms of training, then in the dog's mind, it's won.
Yeah. And for me as well, the example that I use in the book is, if you tell your dog to go on its bed, and you have to tell it to go on its bed 5 times, when you're out and about with it and you blow the stop whistle, why should the dog listen to you the first time? Because it's so used to having the commands being repeated. Or, you know, if you give a quiet command and the dog ignores you, and you raise your voice, or you stand up, or you get aggressive or anything towards the dog, or assertive towards the dog, then the dog will wait until that point before it obeys you, before it does as it's told. Whereas if you give the dog a quiet command or a quiet instruction, and the dog doesn't follow it, and you then get up and do something about it, and I don't mean getting hard with the dog, you know, take the dog's collar, put them on the bed, the dog learns that regardless of how you give the command, the dog has to follow it. And it goes back to training. You know, if you give a command and your dog ignores it, then the first thing you have to do is ask yourself, have you actually trained the command? Before you then start insisting on anything, you have to make sure it's trained. I went to see this woman years ago with a little puppy, and I pulled up, and she was in the garden with the puppy, and she was shouting and shouting of it, you know, come, come, come. And I just leant out of the car and I said, have you trained your dog to come? And it was only 9 weeks. Have you trained your dog to come? No. Well, why are you shouting it to come then? You really?
I always think the stop whistle is good, because over the years, I mentioned when we spoke before, you know, I've sat and watched and listened to working tests and all people training. But when you say to people, like, is your dog on the stop whistle? And they go, yeah, and I go, shh. And 10 seconds later, 15 seconds later, the dog eventually gets his bum on the floor. Yeah. Well, it's learned, isn't it? To that length of time, it's slow, it's sloppy. You want it in like a split second, really. But yeah, so just diverse. We've really gone off track already, which is terrible for us. Coming back to the books, what made you think that it was even a good idea to write a book called The Pet Gun Dog?
It wasn't actually.
Or was it a good idea?
Well, yes, it was a great idea. But it wasn't my idea. It was my students, so they kept asking for handouts. Okay. And I mean, as you know, at the time, because I gave you access to it, I had a website, the Pet Gun Dog website, and my students used to log into it, and it had all of the videos of the different classes that they were in, and they kept saying, you know, we need to make it more accessible to people, and that's how the books came out. So the books were literally a collection of all the handouts that I gave in class. And then, you know, my students were just really keen on finding out more about dog psychology and how dogs thought, and about movement and muscles, and they just kept asking for it, so I did it. And the book was named after my website, which, good idea or bad idea. Kenny came up with it, my husband came up with the name, because I was thinking of, there was loads of things that I wanted to call it, you know, companion gun dog training and gun dog training for the family dog and all of these things, but it was too long for a website name, and why not call it The Pet Gun Dog? And that was it. That's how it came about. I was discouraged 4 or 5 times to call it The Pet Gun Dog. I was told, you know, nobody would be interested in dogs about in books about the pet gun dog. They either want working gun dogs or pets. They don't want the two combined. But in my head,
Mm.
I was working my pet gun dogs.
Oh, but the vast majority of people in this country, and probably worldwide, but we're talking about this country, that's exactly what their dogs are. I said to somebody the other day, if you work out how many days the average gun dog works in the shooting field,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're lucky, it's going to do every other Saturday.
Yeah.
Most people are not going to start till October unless you're lucky and you can get up on the moors or partridge or whatever. But it's probably not going to do much more than about 10 days.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
You know, some do a lot more. I mean, I did 67 days this year. Probably won't do that number this year coming. No. But 10 days on average. Come the end of January until October, what does it do?
I know.
What does it do?
I know.
You know, and yeah, you can go off and do your working tests and you can do your scurries and all that. But yeah, I think that I think it was a good title, and it hits home with Joe Average.
Yeah, and the problem that we had when I wrote the books. So I mean, I wrote them. They came out in 2010, and I started writing them in 2008, and all of the books were written by people who had dogs in kennels.
Yeah.
And the majority of the gun dog trainers didn't know how to handle a dog that lived in the house. And so they would be giving advice on crate training in the same way they would if the dog was in a kennel, which is really detrimental to the dog. You know, you can't have a dog in a crate for 23 hours in a day, which is generally what happens to kennel dogs. And, you know, they might come out for half an hour in the morning or an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. But with, you can't do that with a crate. The dogs need more than that. And so I was seeing a lot of gun dogs that had been, for want of a better word, broken by traditional gun dog trainers, not out of the hardness, you know, what people think of when they think of traditional gun dog trainers being quite firm, but the fact that they were trying to train the dogs in the way that they would train a kennel dogs, and they would say to the owners, leave the dog in the crate, get it out for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. And you can't do that with a dog in a crate. And so that was causing a lot of psychological issues with the dogs I was seeing from a behaviour perspective.
I think that's changed hugely. I did a little survey on my Facebook page probably about 2 years ago now, and basically asking who kept their dogs indoors and who kept them in kennels.
Yeah.
By far, the vast majority, and obviously I'm only taking a snapshot of people, but by far the vast majority of people kept their dogs indoors. And one of the major factors is dog theft. People feel more secure now with their dogs indoors. So you were probably ahead of the curve a little bit, really, in terms of your psyche behind the book and the content of having the dogs indoors. Mine all live indoors, and you do have to have a different set of rules, if you like. And in a way, you almost, from a gun dog perspective, it's harder work.
It is.
It is harder work. Yeah.
It is.
And you know, just simply, I've come back with the pup today. He's run straight into the hallway, grabbed one of Deb's shoes, and decided to run around the front garden. Now, I've just been out with him for half an hour doing go backs and all sorts of absolutely perfect. Comes indoors, grabs a slipper, runs around like a total lunatic. Now, your immediate instinct, isn't it, to try and grab it and, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah, you can't do that.
But you can't do that, no. But if the dog's in the kennels, you may not come across that.
Well, with a kennel dog, they're not introduced to behaviours that we don't want. And so with a kennel dog, we're confining what and restricting what they can do and what behaviours they can teach themselves. And so a lot of the problems we have with pet gun dogs is if we put them in the garden and we don't keep our eyes on them, in their head, in all of the animal kingdom, unless they're being taught something's not acceptable, it's acceptable. And that's just how animals learn.
Like eating sticks.
Sorry? Like eating sticks. So if I sit down and eat this steak and somebody doesn't tell me it's not acceptable, then it's obviously acceptable, because if it wasn't, I would be getting told off by a senior rank. And so this is what happens with pet dogs. We put them in the garden, they chew the sticks, there's nobody there to say that's not acceptable, chew this instead.
And so they learn all of these bad behaviours, these behaviours which we don't want to introduce. Whereas in the kennel, they're in an environment where they can't introduce negative behaviours. The only thing that they do in the kennel is acceptable to us. And we get them out, and they get all their excitement from us. Everything starts and ends with us. But with a pet dog, they've got, I mean, can you imagine the reward to a dog of you just cooking bacon?
Oh, yeah.
Just you cooking bacon. It's a massive reward for a dog. And if chewing the furniture while they're smelling the bacon, then that's an amazing reward for chewing the furniture.
Yeah. I can remember reading a book, and I won't name the book, but the right early on in the very one early paragraph, and I can't quote it, but it said something like, "You'll never have a proper working relationship with your dog if it lives indoors."
Yeah, I remember.
Well, and you probably heard me ranting about it.
I know that book. I know that book. Yes, I do.
And you know something, it's so wrong. You know, because what I hate in gun dog training are generalizations.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the generalization that you can't have a gun dog if it doesn't live in a kennel. I hate generalizations. You can't have a gun dog if you give it affection. You know, I hate a generalization. You can't train a gun dog with treats. You know, they're all individual little things that just come straight off the top of my head. They are all things that are acceptable in my eyes, but I've got control over them.
Yes.
And unfortunately, in the gun dog world, it's not black and white, but I definitely think it falls into two categories.
It does, and what I find really interesting is, I mean, years ago, when I first did the books, I was very much in the middle. So the trainers, and it's not just gun dog trainers, but general trainers, any dog trainer, and they believed in like heavy-handedness with dogs, and they would look on me as being really soft because I use motivational training and I use treats and toys and play and scratches and running around and being silly. So they looked on me as being a real soft trainer. And then you had the trainers on the other end of the spectrum who just used to feed all the time and with bits of chicken in front of the dog and not have any boundaries. And they would look on me as being really hard. And because I wanted boundaries with the dogs. I wanted, I'm a positive trainer, but I'm not a permissive trainer. So if I say to the dog, don't eat that, then it's not allowed to eat that. You know, but that doesn't mean I come down hard on the dog. It just means, in the same way I raised my son, I had boundaries and I reinforced the boundaries. So it's really difficult because I class myself as a middle of the road trainer in relation to which way the pendulum swings. So I'll use motivational training, but at the same time, I'm not permissive with it.
I think that comes across in the books as well, though. You know, they're not fluffy bunny books. I wouldn't, and obviously I've read them, and I'm looking forward to the revised versions coming through as well. They're practical.
Yeah.
You know, they are practical, and there's some. I'm actually going to use the word. There's some novel training techniques in there. There are techniques that I absolutely openly admit I've scratched my head and thought, what is that all about? But they work.
Which one? Because you used to question me a lot when we did the filming, when we did the original photos as well. You were like, why are you doing this?
The one I tell you what, and this is where, you know, I've been lucky again. I don't want to repeat what we said in the previous interview, but doing your go backs, for example. Now, traditionally, you'd sit your dog up, put your retrieve behind the dog, and do its go backs. Yeah. Which, fun enough, I've been doing with Percy today. Now, you showed me that don't put the dummy right behind it, put it off just slightly to one side, because when the dog's young, and you tend to do that lesson at, I can't remember the age, but 10, 11 months, let's say 12 months, the dog is having to twist really hard. And I can remember doing the pictures and the video for that, and it shows how hard and how much pressure is put on the front of the dog when it's turning. Yeah. So the books are more than training books. Yeah, they are. This is where the kinesiology comes from. So I'm really hot on age-appropriate training. You know, the cruciate ligaments, so the ligaments hold bone to bone.
and tendons attach muscles to bones. And so I'm really conscious that in a young dog, while the bones are still growing and the growth plates are still open, so the growth plates are at the end of the long bones, it's very, very easy to damage a young dog. And the last thing you want is for the dog to turn really quick and to hit the ends of the long bones together, because if it damages the growth plates, you could end up with a lopsided dog, or you could end up with a damaged cruciate ligament. And so when they're spinning on the spot very quickly, like that, and especially in the wet, you really want to have a well-toned, well-muscled dog to prevent any damage to the ligaments. And so I do it that way. I gradually build up the angle of the go back, and also setting the dog up to succeed, because as the dog looks over its shoulder, it can see the dummy immediately and it knows it's getting it right. Whereas if it can't see the dummy, then it could turn, not quite know what it's doing, and lose its confidence. So it's about setting the dog up to succeed, but also making sure from a physical perspective, you're not pushing the dog beyond the capabilities of a young body. So you don't want to twang cruciate ligaments when they're young.
Have some of your techniques been questioned by some traditionalist trainers?
Only one or twice.
yeah. And you see, and the thing is, it shows. I don't know who's questioned you, but does it show a slight naivety? Like, again, another one that you use in the book that I remember is, and we did it with Angus, is filling a plastic water bottle up with water. Now you think, oh, what is that all about? Picking up plastic water bottles with water. But actually, when you see a little bit behind it about getting the balance and learning to balance things, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was so funny when we did.
You should write a book.
Thank you. I think I might do that. I mean, now you'd use the retrieving roll to give the dog a bit of grip on the bottle. I used to use the Volvic bottles because they had ridges in. The dogs could drop their canines in the ridges and hold on to it that way. But it's so that when they first start going on runners and they've got something moving around in their mouth, it doesn't freak them out and they don't drop it. It just means they learn balance as well. And especially with a novice dog, it just gives them confidence.
For me, your light bulb moment was the retrieving roll, because I remember filming that and I was gobsmacked. And I've told people and I've used it, and the way that worked on those two Cocker Spaniels was unbelievable on the films. And in this day and age of editing and perhaps things don't always appear what they are, 100% straightforward filming, genuine, no editing, no messing about. That was absolutely amazing. That was, and just a brilliant, simple idea.
Thank you. It was the little red cocker that did it for me in the film. Yeah. The only thing we'd get her to pick up was the bag of treats, and we went on to a prey dummy, which is like a pencil case. And the problem we had is that then started bringing in behaviour issues. So she, because it was a pencil case, the treat fell to one side, so she started shaking it, and so that was starting to bring behavioural issues in as well. And so it was like, what can we do to get her on something balanced and canvas and still have a reward in it? And the whole thing with dogs, with any animal really, is what's in it for me. And if there's nothing in it, if the dog doesn't get a warm and fuzzy, it isn't going to do it. And so that's how it came about.
I'll tell you a little success story I've got a chap comes training me. We've got a little cocker, and she just wasn't interested in retrieving at all. Absolutely just not interested. And he'd been going to another trainer for 2.5 years with this little dog. And anyway, cut a long story short, we worked on it, and the only thing she'd pick up was pine cones.
Okay.
So, don't know why, but that's so be it. I said to the chap, if she wants to pick up a pine cone, pick up a pine cone. So what we started to do was wrap some pine cones in the retrieving roll. And we are now to the point where that little dog, we went from pine cones to tennis balls. But what happened was the retrieving roll became her almost like her comfort blanket. That was what she was comfortable picking up.
Yeah.
And you know, we progressed right through to now she picks up pheasants and everything else. But I've got to be honest, it would have been a job to try and work that out without, and we didn't. And again, it's the other thing. I hope you don't mind me saying this. Is the treat in the retrieving role, which is like the key to it, really.
Yeah.
I hardly use that.
Yeah.
So it was a case of there's my tool, but I don't have to use it slavishly like it's been demonstrated.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that too many people. I use a place board, as you know. We've had this discussion before. You use hoops and stuff like that. There's a lot of advice out there at the moment where people are using 2, 3, 4 place boards. I don't. I use one place board. That's it. So I've taken a bit of an idea, but I've adjusted it to myself.
I think the problem with, I mean, I'm not a place board trainer. I use rubber mats. I turn mats upside down because it's about having a different surface for the dogs. You know, they're very, very tactile. So as soon as they go on a different surface, whether it's stepping up or, I know a lot of the place boards have got like AstroTurf on them. Putting rubber on would be better because then it's very different texture as well. And it means you can then use a rubber mat, roll it up, put it in your bag, take it out training with you if you can't take your place board with you. But it's place boards using treats, using clickers, people aren't phasing them out. And so that's a lot of the problem is the dogs then become so, and the retrieving role, you know, putting treats in the retrieving role, they become too reliant on that piece of equipment because they never go through the phasing out phase. And so that's, you know, that's something you're right. When you use the retrieving role to start off with, you would use the treats and show the dog that there's something in it for them. But then you very quickly start withholding the treat. Leave the treat in there, but then start withholding it for like 3 or 4 retrieves, or making sure the dog's putting it in your hand, and then from it putting it in your hand to go into a sitting delivery, and or then not giving it a sweetie until it's sitting to heel after a retrieve, or 2 retrieves or 3 retrieves. And so you're phasing out the reliance on the piece of equipment and turning it into just you and your dog doing it because your dog wants to do it for you.
You cover all that in the books.
I cover all of that in the books.
Yeah. I like the idea. I mean, obviously things have progressed with the books as well. When we came up with the idea of the DVDs and having the films to go, so you're launching your new portal, and I've just sat and done the promo video for you. So I've had a little sneak peek, which was brilliant. So come on and share. Can you share something with us on that? You've done your little thing.
Yes.
So go on, tell us about that.
So originally, as you know, because I've still got the book with all the drawings in that we did in 2011, the DVDs, and we sat down and said, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I've even got the video still that we did of Angus and Ziggy when Ziggy kept turning his bum to the camera. Do you remember when I was doing the intro for the website? He kept turning his bum, entire male turning his back end to the camera when I was speaking. It was so funny. And so the plan was to do it similar to how I did it with my training classes, which is you would log into the website, you would have the videos of all the different exercises, and then you could go training on the field with them. But we couldn't secure the videos, we couldn't make them so they weren't downloadable, and also Wi-Fi wasn't as prevalent as it is now, and so we couldn't do it, and we put them in DVDs instead. But now technology's caught us up, and so all of the films have now been split into even smaller segments than what they were on the DVDs, and they're now in an online training platform. So when you get the book, you go in with your order number and register using your order number, and then you've got years access to the videos that relate to the book. And we've added a lot more videos. As we did a section on gun dog games, which had me falling about with Spud because he just kept hunting and hunting for the sweeties.
Yeah.
And so there's the gun dog games, and there's more age appropriate training and more training for 2 dogs. I'm trying to think what the other new videos were. The dressing cold game, introducing cold game as well.
in the advanced book, the retrieving rules, and I can't remember the other.
See, really, you know, you're ahead of the curve, aren't you? It's, you know, people are going to copy this, don't you? You know, this is going to be an idea that will other people will do. But you know, if you're I can't even say the word. Say the word for me. An innovator. That's the word. Innovator. If you are, then you know you're always going to get that, and that's something to be proud of, really.
Thank you. It's really frustrating because people have started copying it already. You know, people who knew that I was going to go online this year have done stuff, and it is tricky. It is really tricky when you see people. You know, the books are out there and the films are out there for people to train the dogs and have fun with them and have better behaved dogs, better trained dogs, and just have a deeper understanding of the animal that lives with them. But then it is frustrating when people wrap up what you're doing as their own. That is really frustrating. But as you say, as an innovator, people will copy.
You said that a lot easier than I did.
I've been practicing.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I should have got my scripts. I should have got my scripts sorted out before I went down that route, shouldn't I? Really. Yeah. But you know, things will continue to evolve, and going back to this situation, and we mentioned it earlier on. I think gun dog training, it's always evolved. I've got a book. I was always after. I wanted a first edition, and it's 1914, and it's called Spaniels. They're Breaking for Sport, and that's the title of the book. 1914, and at the time, the term breaking, we put a different connotation on it, if you like. Breaking at the time was because a lot of gun dog trainers back then were also horse breakers. So horse breaking, i.e., getting it used to the saddle and everything else, but that terminology was still used for gun dogs. Mm-hmm. I managed to get a copy of the book. It cost me a lot of money, but it was a book I always wanted. And those techniques have just changed dramatically. And I think it's a great thing that gun dog people, trainers, owners are now looking for more positive ways to train their dogs.
I think my relationship with dogs has really changed. Even in 20 years, you know, it's really changed because they're more pets now, and as I say in the book, I think central heating had a lot to do with it as well, because I know when I was little, it was always, the dog used to like lying in the hole, and it was always, you know, Kim, either come in or get out because it's too cold, you know, let's shut the door.
Yeah.
So things have changed drastically now. We live more open plan. The dog's got more and more part of the family, and you know, when I was little, it would be a case of mum would stay at home quite often or work part-time when they had children, and that was the time traditionally to get the dog. And then the dog would always be at the bottom of the pecking order because mum was busy sorting husband out, sorting the children out, washing and so on. And then the dog just kind of fitted in, you know, and the dogs were still allowed to roam then. So they'd go out in the morning. I mean, my dog used to see me to school. Yeah. She used to come to school, come to the corner of school with me, and then she'd go out and hang out with the local dogs, hanging around the street and playing in the gardens. And then she'd be at the corner of the street waiting for me, carrying my satchel home, and that's how it was, you know. So my relationship with dogs have really changed. They've become, not that they weren't part of the family when I was growing up. I mean, my dog was my best mate, my first dog when I was 13. But they've become more and more enmeshed within the family, you know, with people take the dogs on.
In some places, the balance has become unbalanced.
It has, and people are looking on them as fur babies, which is a term that I really cringe over because they're not honouring the dog for a dog. They're trying to turn it into a little human rather than looking at it as a social predator with this fantastic energy and this fantastic way of living. I mean, dogs don't have principles or ethics, but they do have their own code, you know, like defer to a senior rank and things like that. And we've got this amazing animal that is sharing our homes, and people look on them as babies and they're not, they're social predators. But they are much more part of our life than they've ever been, and we consider the dog when we do things. I mean, I do as well, you know, say, oh well, I'm not going to go on holiday because I can't take my dog, or I'm not going to leave them in kennels, so I'm not going to do this. And the relationship with dogs have changed so much, and it's only right that the training evolves with it. But that doesn't mean we indulge with dogs, because that's not honouring their energy system. You know, we have to still treat them like dogs, even as we're doing more motivational training and working within how dogs learn as well as being motivational. So by that I mean, in the animal kingdom, there are consequences. If they're on told that it's not acceptable, then it's acceptable, so they'll do it. There's a consequence for when it's not acceptable, and then if we want something to repeat it, then we'll make it really positive experience for the dog. And so it's working within their intrinsic ways of learning, but also making it really motivational and accessible for more people as well. People don't want to be rough with their dogs.
Just I don't want to give too much away what's in the books, but again, there was a fascinating little thing that I know you did your masters in, I think it was.
Yeah.
Just touch on that, because I saw you demonstrate that when we did some photos for it, and I found it quite fascinating. And the more you understand, or you haven't got to be. I'm not a dog behaviourist, but I understand dogs.
Yeah.
And the more you manage just to peek into that, but go on. I don't want to steal your thunder. But just
It was really interesting, because when we did the masters, originally I was going to do it on the crossing the point. You know, so would a dog follow if you pointed to the left with your right hand? Would the dog follow it? And the more I did my research, I found that it was more appropriate to look at the gaze. So and I did loads of research on human psychology and how humans follow the gaze as well. And so to start off with, I mean, you know, you're a dad and you're a granddad as well. So when babies are little, the first thing they do is they look at something, and so they try to communicate. So if they want, you know, if you look at the baby will look at whatever it is at once, and then we start following the gaze. So before a baby learns to point, it'll follow the gaze and it'll indicate what it wants with the gaze. And dogs do the same. And so if you're looking at and I did the research on wolves, and then I did it on dogs as well. When a wolf or a hunting dog finds prey, it'll lock onto it with the gaze, and so it'll actually turn its head completely and it'll lock onto whatever it is it's going to go after. And that is an indicator for the other dogs to then look and lock onto the prey as well. And so I did a big experiment with the gun dogs, and we used trained gun dogs that all knew the lefts and the rights and the go backs. And we set an experiment up where we either, so eye contact with the dog, so looking straight at the dog and either using a hand signal with the command get out, or using no hand signal and using the gaze with the get out, or looking one way and indicating with the other with the hand. So you're looking to the left and indicating to the right, and just seeing which one the dog followed. Bearing in mind they were all really, really well trained dogs. They followed the gaze over the point. And it was just mind blowing, because the people who turned up, none of them knew what we were doing. They just turned up. It was an experiment, and it was absolutely mind blowing. And we filmed it all. It was phenomenal.
So, what's the relevance then in gun dog training?
So
again, don't give too much away because people won't buy your book. But
okay. So I won't give too much away.
Yeah,
the relevance is that when you're training a young dog, if you can tap into a dog's psychology by looking at stuff, you're immediately setting the dog up to succeed, because that's how dogs communicate. So they communicate through the gaze. And if you can incorporate that as part of your training, part of your handling, then you're then setting the dog up to succeed quicker, and they understand what you want them to do as well. And so it just gives them that confidence to follow a new command, or learn a new trick, if you like.
And if people pick this up, it's a bit like when you set your dog up for a straight line retrieve. And, you know, we all try and get this eye contact with our dogs, don't we? I'm really keen on that with mine, especially. But when you're lining them up for a straight retrieve, it's almost like you're waiting for them to lock on.
Yes.
And that's your timing to send the dog once it's locked on. And that, if you learn to watch for that,
yeah,
fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
It's no good you looking down at the dog. What you just said, you need to be looking where the dog needs to go.
Yeah, so for me, if I'm doing a strip or I get on, then I turn my body into an arrow, so I don't crouch when I cast a dog off. I'm standing up tall and I'm using the point. But from training very early on, as I throw the dummy, I keep my arm out, so the dog learns to follow the point. And everything about me is locked on to the dummy. So my gaze, my energy, my arm, my toes, my pelvis, everything's lined up to where the dog's going. And then just before I cast the dog off, I look down to make sure the dog's looking as well. When the dog's looking, then I send the dog. But everything about me, my energy, and this is going back to my kinesiology days, where you're working with energy all of the time. Everything about me is connected with the dummy or with the retrieve. And then when the dog is locked on, and I just check, do a quick check-in on their eyes, and then send them.
How much are the books?
$19.99.
Right, $19.99. Just for that one thing, that's worth 20 quid.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that can make things so much easier and can make a difference.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it over and over again. It's definitely something that can make a difference. Excuse my phone's ringing, which it never does do now in this current climate. So I don't know who it is.
Hear it? Can't hear it.
Yeah. Oh, good. But yeah, it's well worth it to get that, just that different aspect of things, just that different angle, and it just helps things. Going back to the retrieving role again, it's just having another little tool in your game bag that you can think, oh, hang on, I'm gonna just use that. And as I say, time and time again, I've gone back to the books. I think, I've just got a bit of an issue. I'll just have a look, and I'll go for one of Lez's off the wall training ideas, and yeah, it works. You know, it's keeping your open mind to it.
I think because I approach it from a behaviour perspective, you know, things like the lefts and the rights, I never train a dog up on the fence line. And that's probably because I've done all my training in public parks, whereas a lot of gun dog trainers have got pristine grounds, haven't got all the local dogs going in, cocking their legs up against the fence line. And so that's somewhere that I would never train a dog, never train a young dog or a novice dog, because there's too many smells. The dog ends up being overwhelmed. And so I did go against a lot of traditional methods, not because I wanted to go against them, but because I knew I would set the dogs up to succeed by not doing it that way.
But again, not everybody has all those facilities. In fact, the vast majority of us don't have those facilities.
No.
You know, we don't have the facilities to, you know, and I struggle with that just myself. I mean, I've been down the local playing field today. That's where I do most of my training.
Yeah.
So when you've got somebody like yourself that comes at things from a slightly different angle, not from, if you don't mind me saying, a traditional gun training angle, it gives you an outlook on things, another view. And if you're open-minded to it and don't dismiss them as being gimmicks or off-the-wall ideas, they help and they're useful. And whether you go, you know, with that whole pet gun dog Bible, or you take aspects of it, which I hope you don't mind me saying, I think is a good thing to do. You take aspects of all sorts of different training.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen your results. I've seen the way you train. I've seen people that have come with, and this is the other thing where these books are important. Not everybody nowadays that has a cocker or a Labrador or a Springer or any of the other gun dog breeds, not all of them want to go and work in the shooting field, but they do want to tap in to the dog's natural abilities.
Yes.
And again, that's where I think your books, the way you train. And the other thing is, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on now.
That's
I
okay,
can see you've glazed over. What's this about this accredited gun dog training scheme thing? What's that all about?
Good, Nick. Thank you. So the accredited gun dog instructor program I set up when I moved to Scotland. I had real issues with my knees, and I thought I didn't want to be on the field all the time again. So I decided to train instructors, and it's really difficult, you know, when people say I've done this and I've done that, to pick them up and run with them and educate them in a way that will bring them forward. So I decided that I wasn't going to do that. I was going to train everybody from scratch with a level playing field, and so that's what I do. So that we'll start off working our way through the books, getting them really familiar with training the exercises, and then they have 5 days in Scotland really working through the books and getting a bit of extra intensive dog training. But then also they learn anatomy and physiology. We do dog.
That's another ology. What was that ology?
Anatomy.
No, it's not an ology. What's the other? Anatomy and
physiology.
Physiology. Okay, yeah.
Physiology. So
yeah.
It's so the anatomy is the components, and the physiology is how the components work. And so, like the digestive system, the respiratory system, and so on. So basically, what makes a dog a dog. And so they learn all of that, nutrition, and then we cover behavior problems, behavior modification, and on top of that we do all of the gun dog stuff as well. And it takes 18 months, and at the end of the 18 months there's assessments, and they end up with 2 level 3 certificates, one in canine studies and one in canine training and behavior. And on top of that they've got all of the gun dog stuff that I do, and then they get given a syllabus to teach my work. It takes 18 months to get through. It's really intensive. It's a really intensive course.
So how many people have gone through this?
Including the current students, there's 26 people.
Blimey.
Yeah, it's doing really well.
Yeah. And of course,
I start it once a year, so it's only January, and we only take in between 8 and 10 people at a time.
So those let's call it 30 for round numbers. They obviously go out, and then it's a bit like pyramid selling, I suppose. Really,
no,
only
it's not pyramid selling. It's not.
No, that's wrong. But when I said I might have got that wrong. What I was trying to I use that phrase, if I can explain it, is that they will go out and hopefully train in the way that they've been taught.
Yes.
Which is that's why and they obviously disseminate that training and the techniques and the attitudes to more people.
Yes.
So that's the reason I use pyramid selling, in the terms of that filters down to more and more people, which can only be a good thing. There was a compliment at the end of that.
I know what you mean, but it's not the selling side of it. So, I mean, there's only me. If I can only, because I still write, and I've got more books on the go at the minute. I've got an outline for another 3 books, and so I want to do that. I'm writing rather than being on the field, and so we need really good, educated trainers out there. You know, trainers who know their craft, who know how muscles and bones come together, and they know about nutrition, but aren't affiliated with any particular pet food. You know, because like with vets, you go to vets for advice on nutrition, and they're trained by whichever dog food they sell.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that trainers are completely unbiased. You know.
So who are these people then? You know, how does somebody come and be a pet gun dog affiliated trainer, or what the name of it is?
Accredited pet gun dog instructor.
Okay. Yeah. So how did that happen?
So first of all, they fill in an application form, and then I sit and go through it, and then I interview them over Zoom, which is really scary for them. And then they either come and join us or they don't. So I'm looking.
Yeah, but what? Sorry, I think I interrupted you then. So what you're looking for then?
I'm looking for somebody who wants the best
for the dogs and who's open to new ideas and who want to help people. Because it's at the end of the day, it's all about the people. It's more about you're training people, you're not training dogs.
Well, this is going forward. This is a business for these people, or do you get people just come just to do the course just to further themselves?
It's business. So
yeah.
They at the end, one of the modules we do is setting up a canine business. It's part of the Open College Network qualification. They get the unit is setting up a canine business, and then they'll go and be independent trainers. They have to come and do CPD with me every couple of years to make sure that everybody's still teaching to the same standard, which is important. And then then license, so they do have to pay a license fee, which will keep them accredited, allowed to use the trademarks. I took a trademark out, the APGI trademark, which is the dummy with the writing in it.
Yeah,
I can't use that because I'm not accredited. I'm not an accredited pet.
Okay.
So I can't use it. But it's kind of a seal of quality. You know, if you see this on somebody's website,
standard.
It's a good standard. They've had 18 months worth of training. They've got 2 level 3 certificates regulated by Ofqual. They've been externally verified. They've been assessed, and they're all teaching to the same syllabus.
So, what? Excuse me for being slightly aggressive on this.
That's okay.
So, what enables you to do that? I mean, you know, how comes that you can do that?
How can I do that? Well, because it's my work. So I'm accrediting them. So there's 2 elements of it. There's the OCN qualification, which is theirs for life. So you get
OCN?
Open College Network. So
right.
the College Network is regulated by Ofqual, you know, who regulates the schools. And so it's Ofsted regulates the school, Ofqual regulates the colleges. And so it's on the national qualification framework, so it's the equivalent of 2 A levels. And it gives each one gives 24 credits towards a degree if you want to go on and do further education and get a degree or a master's degree. So it's a really, really good qualification in a profession where there is very few regulated qualifications.
Are you qualified to teach?
Yes.
All right. So that's what I was getting. That's what I was actually getting at, rather than just being a lady who sits there with a typewriter and writes lots of words.
No, I've got a City and Guilds teaching qualification. So I'm a further and adult education teaching certificate, and I've also got an assessor certificate. I'm a registered training provider with Open College Network West Midlands. And I'm also a touch of a health instructor and fire walk.
Your business card must be enormous just to get all your qualifications in it. Like when you send in a CV to somebody, is it like a book?
Yeah.
And then like what you've done is at the bottom, but So the point of that, the whole point of that question was really, and I didn't know all of that, to be honest. I knew parts of it, but the whole point of that is you're just not somebody who's just set themselves up to be a gun dog trainer. Which unfortunately a lot of people do. Yeah,
no, I mean I'm a trained trainer, so so from a dog perspective, you know, I've got my master's degree, so I can teach in colleges and university with my master's degree. And then I've got my teaching qualification. I got my teaching qualification in 2001, and I'm also a qualified instructor of kinesiology. I'm a qualified professional fire walking instructor. Fire walking if anybody doing fire walking and teaching fire walking is, and I've actually got some of it in the pet gun dog course as well, which
fire walking.
Well, we don't do fire walking, but we do other elements within it, like we do an arrow break, which is really exciting. But it's relevant.
I actually don't feel anywhere near as bad now when I said some of your ideas in the books are off the wall.
They are off the wall. But, you know, I mean, doing an arrow break is amazing because what you're doing is you're teaching people to step into that fear. And when you first start teaching, and you can let your nerves get the better of you, and, you know, it's just about stepping into your power and knowing that when you put your mind to something, you can do it, and you can
it's all in your head, you know, the fear's all in your head. And
I find a big gin and tonic actually helps me when I'm fearful.
well, it does, but you can't do that and then go for a drive.
I definitely don't go fire walking.
Say that again?
I said definitely don't go fire walking if you've been drinking alcohol.
No, you're not allowed to do that.
No. You better put a disclaimer up on this when you finished editing it.
Yeah.
Do not drink and go fire walking.
Do not drink and fire walk at the same time. It's just amazing doing, you know, being able to face your fears and do it anyway. And
so, talking of fears and facing things. So, what's in the future then for Lez Graham? That's the burning question on everybody's lips.
Oh, the burning, very good, Nick. That's a really good link. Well, I've got a couple of books on the go. I mean, we've got the Pet Gun Dog, which is it's. I'm going to put this podcast out at the time of it coming out. So, by the time
which is when?
May the 4th. May the 4th be with.
Don't.
I thought it was really good. May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
So that's when it's coming out. It was
like the Chinese. It's like the Chinese dentist joke, isn't it?
I don't know that one.
Now, what time you got to go to the Chinese dentist? 2:30. 2:30.
2:30. Oh, very good.
There you go. That's as bad as yours. Anyway, quickly
moving on.
Yeah.
I've got the second book in the Train for Life series to write, because there was Manners Not Mayhem, and there's going to be the Well-Mannered Dog, which is the second one to come with it. So that's for adult dogs. It's kind of the equivalent of the Pet Gun Dog, but without the gun dog bit, you know. So it's like all the good manners around home. Mm-hmm. And then another book that I want to write is about Siggy, and it's about living with an epileptic dog.
Yeah. Which
is really traumatic. And you know, it's something that's really hard to let go of. You know, not long after Siggy died, if the dog scratched through the night, I'd be on my feet and running without thinking, thinking I was going to find the dog having an epileptic fit. And it's really traumatic. So it's just the whole journey and what happens at the end, you know, being brave and letting them go. And it's something people don't write about, what happens when you have a dog put to sleep and seeing the light leave their eyes. And so I think that's an important book to write. I've tried writing it 4 times and I haven't been able to.
No.
That's for the future. And then I'm also picking up a course that I wrote in 2006, which is Kinesiology for Animals. It's a big course. It was an 8-day course and 6-month, and then 8-day hands-on course, which I wrote in New Zealand. And kinesiology.
Is that for you to do, or that's a course you are doing?
That's a course I'm teaching. So I wrote this course. It's a course that got me into dog behaviour, because I had to do lots of research into prey and predator behaviour. And my kinesiology colleagues have kind of twisted my arm and said, you know, we really need a good kinesiology for animals course in the UK. And so I'm going to be resurrecting that specifically for dogs, not for horses, which is huge. It teaches all about the animal energy systems and the gut and the microbiome and dog health. And traditional Chinese medicine is what it's based on again. And it's really cool because we set goals and stuff.
So what are you going to do next week?
Next week I'm going to kind of sleep, I think.
You never stop. I mean, and that's all credit to your energy and it's good that you're able to impart your knowledge into so many different aspects. But at the end of the day, I think I'm getting this right. Your main interest is in the dogs and the well-being of the dogs, and making sure that we all end up with well-balanced, healthy, happy dogs, whether they be gun dogs or, as you say, with your other set of books there, just normal. Is there such a thing as a normal pet dog? There's not really, is there? No, pet dogs.
Just a dog.
Just dogs.
Just a dog.
So I'm going to let you get back to your typewriter. Do you still use a typewriter? I know you're not. I know you're not great on technology.
Thank you for that, my technology guru.
But no, I hope you've enjoyed this, and it's just been a little bit different when I suggested this to you, and I know we've had a couple of conversations. I think it's hopefully cleansed your mind, and people know a little bit more about you now, and you know, it's always good to know what's behind the black and white on a page.
Yeah, thank you. No, I have enjoyed it, Nick. It was a bit scary.
Well, you know what
come and join me now.
you know what my previous job was, so I'm quite good at asking very poignant questions.
Yes.
Good. Well, look, you have a good day. Stay safe.
I will. You too. Thanks very much.
We'll talk again soon. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.